a very warm welcome to our speaker. It's a special and honor to have Mr. Prabhu Williams as our today's resource person. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Uh, I welcome our director, Sir Dr. AGV Narayan, our faculty members, my seniors, and my endearing friends who have joined here with more curiosity and enthusiasm. Mr. Prabhu Williams is a PGLSEM postgraduate in Logistic and Supply Chain Management certificate holder from XLRI, Jamshedpur. He is also an MBA graduate from Anna University. Our resource person is into the field of logistics management, freight management, Group H. He is currently general manager at Ocean World Lines International Limited Liability Company. Ocean World Lines is a renowned company in the field of freight forwarding, logistics, sea freight handling, and LCL cargo consolidation for more than 20 years. He was a former sales executive at Gulf Agency Company, Dubai, and even was a sales executive at Shaw Valence, Bombay. He has a chronicled success of nearly 2 decades experience in diverse areas of business unit operation and commercial operations, encompassing shipping, freight forwarding, and logistic and transportation. He is proficient in managing business operations CRM, administration finalization of strategic alliance with partners. He is well organized with successful track of record that demonstrates self-motivation, entrepreneurial ability, creativity, and initiative to achieve corporate goals. Now, I welcome our speaker, Mr. Prabhu Williams, to share his insight and expertise on career prospects in logistics and supply chain management. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Kaushika, for the brief introduction. I'm immensely pleased to take some time off and share prospects of logistics and supply chain management with all the prospective students. It's a pleasure seeing you all. Once again, thank you, Kaushika. So we can, without further ado, we can go with the presentation. So I will just start sharing the presentation now so that we can start off immediately since we are a little behind schedule. Give me a moment. Are we getting the slide?
Yeah, Prabhu.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so a warm welcome to all of you. And basically, I will try to cover up as much as possible within the limited time slot I've been given. And of course, I mean, I don't want to prolong too much also because I have no idea how many people are really tuned up at this stage to specialize in this growing discipline. But my support to all the aspirants who want to specialize in this field and who have not taken a decision, please consider, because I'm a strong lobby for this discipline now. And I've not been much into academics. I'm purely an industry person. And probably this sort of experiential learning from an industry person, hopefully from my side, will impart better knowledge and understanding for MBA aspirants especially. So basically, we say logistics and supply chain management in tandem, but there is a difference. I'm basically a logistics practitioner, but you might say, why am I talking about supply chain then? So see, supply chain is an emerging field. So people, including me and including even senior practitioners, still don't clearly define properly what is the difference between logistics and supply chain. So you are no novice if you don't know about that. So don't be concerned about over that. Sorry. And so basically, logistics is a subset of supply chain management. Many companies conveniently have a good infrastructure just to cater to their logistics management needs. But supply chain arena is so vast. Everybody is still exploring this new area, and so prospects for supply chain management is much more for students to specialize in this vast space. Um, so basically, I would like all of you to do a small mental exercise, just on a spatial space. Just imagine 4 points: A, B, C, D. Basically, these 4 points are you can relate as entities, and A, they are all interconnected in some way or the other. A supplies something to B, B does some value addition and supplies something to C, and C finally stores it or does some more value addition like packaging or labeling, and then finally delivers it to D. So just imagine A, B, C, D, and keep imagining this throughout the course of this lecture, because time and again I will come back to this small, remind you about this small mental exercise. So let's go to the next slide, and you'll have a better understanding of what I'm trying to say. So these points A, B, C, D are, you can relate now A as the supplier, B as a manufacturer.
Prabhu,
Yes, Naren.
have you moved the slide?
Yes, I have moved the slide.
It still shows the title slide.
Okay. Hold on, please.
Yeah.
Give me a moment.
Yeah.
Is it showing the second slide now? Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I have to reshare every time, but it's okay.
Cool.
So this these points A, B, C, D, you can relate it to the entities now. A is, you can imagine, is a supplier. B is a manufacturer. C is a distributor, and D is a final consumer. Okay. So probably you might have come across all these entities in your everyday marketing programs and other subjects. So there is a distinct connectedness between these entities. Like a supplier supplies, a manufacturer makes, and a distributor delivers, and obviously the consumer consumes or uses the product. So at each value chain between the entities, there is a conversion process happening, as you can imagine. The supplier gives raw materials to the manufacturer against a purchase order, and the manufacturer starts the conversion process, and probably the finished goods is then delivered to the distributor by the logistics function, and from a retail distributor it can branch off to various intermediaries like wholesaler, sort of a retail distribution center, and then from there it goes to the end consumer. Okay. So there is a value creation in this chain, and everybody vies to maximize value creation for the consumer. And that is basically the principle or doctrine of supply chain management. So there are three types of distinct values which needs to be delivered to the consumer. One is the form value. So that is basically how the product converts itself as per the consumer needs, and finally it's in the hands of the consumer. So the form value is basically one of the underlying value, and the next value is called the place value. So the consumer doesn't want it always in a particular place. Probably he wants it at his door, and he also might be ready to pick up from a particular location if it is delivered there. So the place utility also counts. And the third one, the main value creation, is also the time utility. So this form, place, and time. So delivery, on-time delivery. I mean, this is the mantra of also the modern day supply chain management. So these three basic value creators, any supply chain organization has to properly integrate itself and deliver. So now, basically, you can't just okay. Probably you end up delivering this value to the customer, but at what cost? So you can't just invest more time and energy and money and just to deliver this value creation at a loss. So the company also should have an economic profit, an economic value attached to it. So how to get this economic value integrated within your internal supply chain? So basically, that is where there is a planning team always within an organization who does the integration function. I'll come back to it later also about this planning aspect. So coming back to this slide, the three flows of supply chain, mainly the material flow, which as you can see, it's unidirectional. The material metamorphizes itself and travels from the supplier to the end user in the form of the final finished good. And then you have the information flow, which is two-way, because there is exchange of information between each entity as the process flows. So this is a typical forward supply chain from left to right. So you also have a reverse supply chain, which again, I'll come back to it later. And you also have the third flow, which is a financial supply chain. Obviously, when a customer is in receipt of the goods, he must exchange it with a payment flow or with willingness to pay for that. So basically, that financial is unidirectional in the opposite direction. So the reverse supply chain is also the same direction as the financial chain, because whatever return goods, defective goods, recall goods, again come back to the forward supply chain. So that is all under another space of sustainability, which I'll also explain to you in the forthcoming slides. So shall we go on to the next slide? Yeah. Again, do you have a problem seeing the next slide now?
We could see.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Excellent. So now this clearly elaborates the first flow, which is the material flow. So if you see, you have to see this slide from the top tier is from left to right and the bottom tier from right to left. So flow, basically you have the supplier who supplies this raw material, and there is an inbound logistics. I think somebody's mic is on.
Mahesh? Yeah, no, it's all right, Prabhu.
Thank you. So basically, the first level shows the raw material which flows through the inbound logistics function from probably the supplier's factory to a godown, storage godown probably. And then from the godown, it goes to the manufacturing point and then gets converted to work in progress or to a finished good. And then the outbound warehouse takes over And finally, through the outbound logistics function, you have it reaches the consumer. So as you can see, the internal supply chain comprise of three basic supply chain functions, which is procurement, manufacturing and service operations, and logistics. Okay, so these are the three vital organs of supply chain, and basically candidates should take note that each area, once they specialize in one function, it is always good to go vertically and take the pathway in that particular function to become a seasoned practitioner. I'll tell you why in the forthcoming slides. So procurement, basically, I mean, there are a lot of nomenclatures similar to procurement. You can say purchasing, sourcing, buying, all mean the same with subtle differences. So a procurement team is a kingpin of the supply chain function within an organization. Those gone are the days where procurement just buy products at a cheap rate and say that their metrics is good, they have done their job well. But now procurement function has extended right up to supplier relationship management, taking care of suppliers' welfare. So it has gone much beyond just procurement. And so procurement is the in thing now for supply chain professionals to move forward. And the second function is manufacturing and service operations. I mean, again, the traditional supply chain concepts were just confining manufacturing to just production. So you have a production engineer, you have an inventory planner, and they both coordinate and decide whether we have to go for a make to supply or a make to order strategy, make to stock, sorry, I beg your pardon, make to stock or make to order strategy. And accordingly, they decide how to design their production runs and do the manufacture. So it was a siloed concept, I would say. They don't talk each other to other functions. They just do their job and ensure that efficiency is maintained. But now the production people have to coordinate with procurement, and in case they want is a seasonal product, they need to much in advance of demand. They have to produce, keep the raw material in stock. So all these coordinations is required now. So the production people are not just manufacturing specialists. They have to do their own strategic thinking of how to get the product flow in place once the raw material arrives. Probably a postponement strategy. You would have heard of postponement, where the raw materials and components are not assembled into final product till the order gets penetrated in the process. So this sort of strategic planning needs are now required from the manufacturing and service operations professionals now. The third function, of course, is logistics, where I fit in. So basically, the logistics, as you can see in the slide, there is an inbound logistics and an outbound logistics. The inbound logistics is basically bringing the raw material into the manufacturer's factory, and the outbound logistics basically is catering to the delivery side of the finished goods once it is manufactured. So the scope is for the outbound logistics, because the inbound logistics, big time suppliers normally does an Incoterm C&F, and they do the delivery part through their logistics team. But once the finished goods is manufactured, how it has to reach the customer, proper order processing flow has to be done. So all this is in the outbound logistics side. So there, the scope for logistic professional to show his expertise is more. But here also the logistics function nowadays is completely outsourced because uh, the core members in the supply chain are busy doing their value creation for the customers. As I told you, the value creation of form, time, and place utility. So when they are very busy doing this for their customer, they don't want to put more time on logistics. Though there is a cost, the cost component of logistics is much more impacts the balance sheet than other activities. So they try to outsource, and that is where 3PLs like me come into the picture. So I'm a third party logistics. So basically, I'm not part of a supply chain. So I only do outside support for the supply chain, and probably I can take the inbound logistics role as well as the outbound logistic role as per assignment. So as per the job given to me by my customer, I do it. So logistics is basically, as you can understand, there are two basic components in logistics: warehousing and transportation. So the warehousing also is a big investment for most of the manufacturers. So why invest in warehousing when they need to spruce up their procedures for their core manufacturing activity? So they also sometimes outsource the full logistics process. So that being the case, the warehousing part also gets outsourced, and the transportation part also normally get outsourced. And that is where there is a demand for 3PLs like me to chip in and do this service for those customers. So there is a scope for people to practice in logistics, even though they don't come into the mainstream supply chain. They can provide outside support with a lot of 3PL companies now, which is mushrooming in India. It is just a nascent stage now when you compare to US. The distribution center concept, the regional distribution center concepts, as and when all these multinationals start establishing their base in India, probably the gap will get narrowed, and India is a growing market, the potential is more. So all three functions, I would say, give a good equal amount of scope for students to specialize and move forward once they decide for supply chain as their career. So we'll go to the next slide. Am I being too slow, fast, or if I'm really boring, please you can interrupt me and come out with any suggestions to alter my speed of presentation.
Prabhu, the pace is perfect. You can continue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll go to the next slide now.
Yeah. And you can put it in the slideshow mode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it okay now? Yeah.
No, we don't see. You have put it in the slideshow mode?
Yeah, I tried, but...
right, it's not working?
Yeah, it's not working. So can we proceed like this? It's okay.
Fine. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So this is the next slide where if you see this, the blue linkage, the thick one, connects the three main supply chain functions: the internal supply chain functions of procurement, operations, and logistics. And so all present day organizations try to get their supply chain functions to internally integrate. And these two simple words, internal integration, is very simple to express, but in practice, it is very difficult to do it, to organize it. It takes a long time because all these three functions are always at loggerheads. The trade-off that is needed to see to it that these three functions work in tandem, it is very difficult to define that exact trade-off, because, like, for example, procurement would like to get the cheapest rate for the raw material per unit, so that they can get the brownies from their management that they're doing their job properly. And compromising on suppliers, probably it's again compromising on quality. So the exact price, even though the company can afford more, they'll try to squeeze the best price from a cheap source and try to get that needed raw material into the system. The operations guy might say, hey, to the procurement guy, this product is not good. It is actually delaying the production process. Probably we have to buy some support material to get the right quality of finished goods. So why don't you go for a different substitute product or another certified supplier who can supply a better raw material? So this sort of loggerheads situations can happen between departments internally in the internal supply chain process. Again, between operation and logistics, the logistic people will say, we want more finished goods so that I can do a full truckload and economize on the transportation. Because as you know, the warehousing and transport is the main cost burner for a company. So the logistics would definitely try to economize these two activity. So they will say, don't produce in small lots. You make a production in big lots so that I can economize my transportation cost. So in this way, the logistics will try to play a better game than the other functions. So how we internally integrate these three functions? And there is a solution for this. The present day companies have what is called an S&OP team. This is an emerging concept. Most of the supply chain professionals try to get inducted into this cross-discipline team, cross-functional team, which is called S&OP. And it is also known by different names, like Integrated Business Planning Team, or they also call it Demand Supply Integration, DSI team. So this team is a nerve center now, where they speak to the sales and marketing people, and there is an S&OP review every week. From the marketing team, one representative will come for the meeting, and from the operation team, another person will join, and both decide how to coaxially integrate, coordinate supply and demand, how to bridge the supply and demand gap. So obviously, the sales and marketing budget, the sales people will say the demand is for 50 units. And the operation people will say, hey, we have capacity only for 40 units. So why don't you give up that excess 10 unit demand and try to get more profit from this 40 units we are producing. So this sort of a calculated measure of how to shape up the demand is always discussed in the weekly S&OP meetings between the sales and the operations team. And then there's a representative from the procurement and logistics team also who joined the weekly S&OP. The weekly S&OPs are not joined by the strategic and financial team, which if you see in the slide, they are coming under the supply chain support elements. So that executive S&OP meet is most of the companies do it every month. So the CFO and the Chief Supply Chain Officer, the CSCO also joined this team. And probably a strategic expert from the top management also joins this team. And then they decide some strategic issues from the already discussed operation issues. Okay, capacity building is something more tactical, but probably they'll decide, let's do away with one layer of intermediary like wholesaler. Let's do our deliveries direct to the retailer location and let the end consumer be delivered from the retailer directly. Or if it is a big customer, then they'll take a decision to do a direct delivery from the manufacturing point to the end customer. So all these sort of strategic decisions. And do we need to have a new distribution facility since the demand is shifting to another new location and a lot of customers are located in that location? So this sort of strategic elements are discussed during the executive S&OP meetings. So this puts, when I come to the next slide, see this is just a reframing of the old slide, but only thing, the customer is now shifted to the center. So everybody has to be customer driven now. Like the purchasing should select not the cheapest product or the best supplier as per their convenience. It should be seeing from a value driven aspect whether the form utility is not compromised and properly selected product is being purchased, but the purchasing guy is now customer driven. Same with the operation people. So when they don't now need to focus on long production runs for their convenience. It should be again value driven in the form of time and place utility. If customer wants a cargo in X number of days, how do I produce it? Even though I may have to change my order setting and incur more setup cost, still from my side, I have to compromise and sacrifice this cost because for the sake of customer value. So that there is a common customer value attached, and on the distribution side, the transportation should no longer quarrel that I just need a full truckload every time. So basically, even for a small truckload, if it is for a promotion event, they should be ready to deliver and incur more cost for the company and of course for their function. So everybody now collectively gathers during these S&OP sessions and see to it that the same customer value is delivered, but when they integrate and discuss and do it, probably the economic profit for the company is also not compromised. Right? So that is the right side, the integration bubble is doing, the S&OP team. And so the integration is the area is where most of the specialists from other functions join that cross-functional team. They get all the experience in the S&OP space and then go back to their own function at a senior level. So you have a CPO, Chief Procurement Officer, who was just a procurement executive when he joined the S&OP team. So he has learned all the techniques of cross-functional expertise, and then he can be transferred back to the purchasing team as on a senior scale, like a chief procurement officer or a manager. Okay, so basically this sort of job rotation also, any candidate who enters the supply chain field should be prepared to experience. So we'll go to the next slide. So basically, it is just an extension of the previous slide. What sort of functional roles related to logistics and supply chain management candidates can aspire? So in the field of internally covering the 3 supply chain functions, you have procurement, purchasing, planner, or buyer. I mean, each supply chain function has a planning component, a procurement planner, a manufacturing planner, a logistic planner. See, all this planning component has a very viable future for the students because they need both analytical and relational skills to do the planning job. So most of the center stage for candidates is on the S&OP side, where you can become a demand planner, where you shape the demand. It is also called where you sense the demand. Then you have the supply planner, who does the capacity building, capacity planning, sorry, I beg your pardon. And then the inventory planner, who does the who maintains the inventory carrying cost and keeps it under checks. Because again, there is a periodic inventory and spot inventory. So a lot of inventory types are there. Inventory is again a separate sub-discipline by itself. So you can also go for a seasoned inventory planner role if you have the analytical skills. Of course, all this multi-discipline exposure will lead you into the strategic department, where you take strategic decisions only, like network design and facility location profiling, and of course, selection of vendors for the fleet, vehicles, and supplier selection. So all the strategic roles also is played by the CSCO. Now, the CSCO concept is coming up in most of the manufacturing companies. They have this Chief Supply Chain Officer role. Of course, it's been created right now. People from other disciplines, like an engineering who specialized in production, an engineer who's specialized in mechanical. So these people who work in a functional role, they jump into supply chain. But people who want to specialize in supply chain after MBA, if you want to do MS in supply chain and specialize only in this role, can straight away jump into the space of supply chain. And of course, the external role is also open, like me, where as a 3PL, I also get a fair share of the assignments, though I am not part of the supply chain. I cater to both the inbound and outbound logistics for most of the customers. So that also is very much in demand now. And as a 3PL, I basically choose the ocean provider. Like I decide this product has to come by sea from A to B and then by rail from B to C, so that the customer gets this product on time. So as a 3PL, my job is to ensure that I get this product in time to the customer. And if at all the customer says, delay the product, don't deliver it now, I have to store it in my facility and obviously charge for it too. So the next slide is called a SCORE model. It is basically a planning model for supply chain, where if you see, I don't know if this is quite visible, the blue arrows, the words inside the blue arrows. Are you able to see? Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yeah, you're audible now.
Okay. So
You're audible. Yeah.
Okay. So basically the arrows, if you see, each entity, like the middle is the manufacturer, and you have a tier 1 supplier who's the immediate supplier for the manufacturer, and a tier 2 supplier. And to your right, you have the customer and customer's customer. So basically, each one has these 4 basic functions ingrained: source, make, deliver, and return. So as you can see, this model clearly depicts what sort of supply chain processes happen with each entity. So if you see, the supplier doesn't have to source because he's the sourcer. He's doing the sourcing. So there is only one arrow to your right, which is the delivery and the returns. And if you see the extreme right tier, this is the customer's customer. He doesn't deliver because he's the one who's using the product, but he does return the product if it is not to his satisfaction. So the whole gamut of these entities is centralized with a planning unit. So this planning unit, if you see all the pink small bubbles, is integrated into one big planning bubble. So every entity has to plan for sourcing, plan for making, plan for delivering, and plan for returns. So that planning aspect has to be integrated with the planning team in the other entities also, so that the flow, even if it is a reverse supply chain, takes place in an efficient manner. So this core model formulates the metrics to gauge the performance of the supply chain, whether all these functions are doing their job and it is intended to do what they're supposed to do. Yeah. So now students should, I'm just casually depicting the difference between logistics and supply chain. So by now, probably you would have understood what exactly is logistics, because logistics is confined only to that entity. So the logistic management is planned by that entity for that entity. So basically, if they outsource that logistic function, even that they don't have to plan much. Of course, there will be one logistic coordinator who will connect with the 3PL, and the logistic function will be catered to. But supply chain management is not like that. So you have to have a relation and understanding with other entities so that the value creation is not compromised, and also the economic profit margin of each entity is not compromised. So basically, you can, this slide will be shared with your institute and you can go through it leisurely. And of course, in my first slide, I have given you my email, and you can always come back to me with any clarification. The next slide is the pictorial difference between logistics and supply chain. So the logistics takes care of the same network connectivity, but at the end of the day, the relational aspects is there only through supply chain management, understanding the supplier, understanding the customer. So all this doesn't take place in logistics. I mean, logistics has an objective, just to get that product to see in the right time. You can say, you can also Google search the 7 hours of customer service, right product, right place, right condition, and so on. So this 7 hours are followed strictly by the logistics management professionals, but they don't go beyond the 7 hours. Where in a supply chain, they understand each other and work in tandem, and there is also information sharing, because here each entity is afraid to share their private information with the other. As long as the job is done, it's fine. But in the supply chain, all of them get together and try to see to it the same value is created at a lower price for the companies. So this is again a repeat slide of which are the major functions the students can specialize once they enter supply chain discipline. Procurement, manufacture, logistics. S&OP is the most in demand now. And of course, strategic management by experience through their verticals, they can aspire and become once they specialize. And this slide, I would take another 5 minutes to go through what is that S&OP. So basically, again, a little bit of repetition. In the S&OP discussions, you have representatives from the marketing, from the production, from the finance, and from the strategy. So the marketing guy forecasts some figure for that month and gives a demand forecast. That's the input for the S&OP team. And the other inputs, the production team gives a capacity forecast. We can do maximum this so many units this month, and that input is given. And the strategic, the senior leadership gives the strategic direction, which is an input from the management side, and the finance gives the budgetary constraints, so within which they have to plan. So this sort of, the black ones are the inputs which go into the S&OP team, and the outputs are the different plans which they formulate collectively. The demand plan, of course, this is the maximum demand we can cater to this month. That is decided in the demand plan. And accordingly, the operation plan gives orders to the production shop floor people. This is the maximum units we can make this time. Don't go more than that and add to your inventory layers. So adding to the waste of the company. And the financial plan, again, that is again given back to the finance, saying that we cater to as per your financial goals. We agree to confine within your budgetary constraints. And of course, the strategic plan, I mean, the feedback to strategic department is the alignment is happening. So the purpose of demand supply integration is getting slowly realized. So that is the way this dynamics works, and they call it bridging the great divide, because always demand and supply doesn't go hand in hand and doesn't gel well. So the great divide, that is the S&OP team, is the one which bridges this gap. So that is why they call it great divide. You can also Google search for this term, great divide. So basically, I mean, just a recap of my previous slides. The value creation, what is required for the customer by the for supply chain professionals to deliver, the form, place, and time value. In exchange, they get the exchange value back from the customer, and the strategy in operations, where this make to stock. The make to stock is before the demand is created, the goods are produced in anticipation of demand, and make to order is done once the demand is realized or the order is penetrated, they start the production. That is an MTO concept. And ATO is also engineered to order or assembled to order. That is an extension of MTO. Then there is a strategy. I mean, I've just briefly tell you some strategies in each of the supply chain functions. The procurement strategy, there's a Fisher model where Martin Fisher has designed a model where he relates supply chain with the product. If the product is functional, he says you have to go for an efficient supply chain. And if the product is innovative, you have to go for an agile supply chain. So if you just Google search and refer this term Fisher model, you'll get more details about this. And some enlightenment on sourcing. There's a Krajcik model. It's pronounced as Krajcik, where there's a product portfolio attached in a matrix form, and it's a very useful model. And for your knowledge enhancement, I would suggest all of you to refer this model also. So where the supply, the impact of, how we call, the profit impact is on one axis, and if I'm not mistaken, the goods are classified into 4 goods. Basically, they call it a transaction goods, which is having less supply chain impact, and then you have the leverage goods, critical goods, and strategic goods, where the strategic goods are given more importance. So if you just Google search this model, probably it entails a lot of explanation, but probably in future presentations, I can enlighten each model for you. Of course, there is a strategy component in logistics also, how you design your network, the facility, how you locate your facility, and whether you go for LTL transport or FTL transport, less than transport loads, full transport loads. And then you have the inventory planning models, periodic versus perpetual inventory, fixed order versus I think there's a slide correction. Fixed period. It's fixed period and fixed order. And there's a strategy aspect in distribution also. So you can refer all these materials post presentation through Google search. So now I hope we are on schedule, and I'll take another 10 to 15 minutes time. Is it okay, Mr. Narayanan? We take another 15. Yeah, okay, we'll wind up. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So what are the general certifications available in logistics and supply chain? I'll go from the bottom to up. If you see, maybe most of you have come across MOOC. This is called Massive Open Online Courses. If you refer this mooclist.com, you will see a lot of entities offering these courses. edX, Coursera, Udacity, Udemy, and all these courses are for free for your information. Only when you need a certificate, you need to pay about, say, $160, $150. But again, the value that is attached to this certification is really immense. I mean, at a time, if you go to edX.org, you'll see about 500,000 learners already logging in and learning. So I would strongly suggest MBA one. I mean, I don't want that to intervene in your curriculum, but basically, you should have your eyes and ears focused on such MOOC courses also. I did one MicroMasters program in supply chain management, and I wouldn't say it's easy. I mean, you need to have a dedicated time frame to finish assignments, not to miss all the lectures, and everything comes for free. I mean, so basically, you don't lose anything, but you gain so much knowledge. So I would strongly advise people who want to specialize in supply chain management to get some exposure on these edX courses. And one more advantage is once you complete the MicroMasters program, you're given a credit waiver for one semester in MS in Masters in Logistics and Supply Chain. Most of the universities like ASU, Arizona State, MIT, they call it blended masters, which is only for 9 months instead of the usual 16 months. So once you do this MITx, which is just you pay almost for all the 5 courses about $500 for the certifications for each certificate, but you save about $6,000 of semester fees of the first year, and you're directly inducted in the second semester once you complete this MicroMasters. So it is a win-win, more win for the candidate, I would say. And the first two are the global certifications given for practicing supply chain professionals. I have both these memberships, and so it is a real value additional, I would say. So once you complete your degrees, you have to follow up with such sort of certifications which keeps you recognized in your verticals. So I would strongly suggest to look into all these websites, not only for the education content, but also for the materials they display free of charge, the magazines, the materials, the podcast, the discussion groups you can join. There is so much exposure and so much of your time. If you think you want to apportion it properly, you can just browse through all these websites. You can go to the next slide. But again, as I told you, the 3 supply chain functions: procurement, manufacturing and service operations, and logistics. If you want to specialize in this, there are institutes who cater only to those sub-functions, like CIPS, Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply. They have 6 levels, level 1 to 6. So they make you a full-fledged procurement professional. But these exams are not that easy to pass, but you need, the more time you spend, more dedication you can afford, you can really go through and get this organized. It's a value certification. Same like ISM World, Institute of Supply Management, USA. They give certifications like CPSM, CPSD. So you can go through those websites which are marked in green for your future reference. Of course, for transportation, there is one particular degree, which I have that also, CLTD, which is offered only by ASCM. This, if you're specializing in transportation area, you can look at it. Of course, in my experience as a 3PL, where my background is shipping, and then I landed in 3PL. and I'm catering to logistic customers. So you have pure shipping certifications, which are offered by two institutes, ICS, then Lloyd's Maritime, then Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. So these are all, once you get into the experience space, you can consider these certifications depending on your verticals. This is an article which this is the salary structure in UAE here locally for different designations of the internal supply chain functions, which I highlighted. I mean, it is just from a secondary source. It is always debatable. The left side gives the minimum salary, the right side gives the maximum, and it is in UAE dirhams per month. So one, you can convert it. The USD is about three and a half dirhams. So you can just convert it for your understanding. Of course, this slide will be shared to you.
Yeah.
These are another 2 minutes. These are the reference sites for supply chain knowledge enhancement. There are a lot of sites, but I just picked up the better ones for you to browse. And this will take much of your browsing time, but it is very useful, all of them. I would pick two in particular, which is the Smart Brief, which is a daily newsletter which comes to your inbox every day. You can subscribe, and this gives the latest supply chain news and gives the link to other magazines also from there, so that you can always refer. And inbound logistics, they have the dialogue, like Smart Brief, they have DIA, LOG, sort of magazine content. It's in the form of everyday newsletter. So these two are the picks from this, which I would suggest. Students can go through everything, no problem. So, Mr. Narayanan, if we are time constrained, can I touch upon this subject also, which will take about 10 minutes?
Yeah, Prabhu, you can go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have time.
Okay. So now this is a special space in modern supply chains called sustainability, because so far I told you the value creation which is being delivered by all entities, and they also take care by internally integrating the supply chain functions in a way that they create this value without compromising on their profits. That adds a financial value to the company. But there are two very distinct values which are not being addressed so far by many companies, and that is the social value and environmental value. The environmental impact and the social impact of the activities. But why supply chain is victimized for these impacts? Because supply chain professionals or supply chain functions can only address these sustainability issues, not a finance function or an HR function in a company. So that is why people who want to specialize in supply chain are now more fine-tuned to get into the sustainability aspect of supply chains. So you would have heard about Scope 1 emission, Scope 2 emission, Scope 3 emission. I can briefly explain to you. The Scope 1 is the emission is what your facility directly puts in the air, how the pollution aspect which is resulting from your core activity in your factory. That is Scope 1 emission. And Scope 2 emission is basically the resources what you utilize, which is provided by the government, apart from the Scope 1 emission, which is the water you use, the electricity you use. If you don't save on this power, so probably you're wasting your emissions, and that all gets accounted in the Scope 2 emission. And Scope 3 emission is for the full supply chain. Even if your supplier wastes electricity or wastes water, you are questioned because you are buying from the supplier. So the Scope 3 emission now, the big companies are just advertising just to get brownies from community that they are also catering to Scope 3 emission controls, like they have a code of conduct with the supplier, and the supplier has to vigilantly follow this code of conduct. And he cannot have child labor, and he has to have a minimum modernized facility without which is labor conducive. As you know, sometime back in Bangladesh, a supplier factory got burned because of inadequate facility, and that supplier was supplying to Walmart. So basically, Walmart was questioned because they sourced it from a cheap supplier who doesn't have inadequate facility and was engaging in slavery. So that sort of things has to be addressed in the supplier code of conduct. And then carbon footprint. So as you know, greenhouse gas contents. Now all the GHG gases in the atmosphere, mostly it is carbon, but even methane, everything is converted to carbon equivalents. So the lesser carbon footprint you show, the better sustainable you are. That has become the norm now. So everybody is going for net zero emissions. Like, I burn so much carbon, but I try to save through my processes this equivalent of carbon, and so I'm achieving net zero. So that's the way people are advertised. If you even buy a plane ticket now, if you see under the air fryer, they will also mention this flight is consuming so many kgs of carbon dioxide. So basically, everybody is becoming aware now, and they put it as an advertisement propaganda that they are going towards net zero, or trying to achieve net zero, or at least addressing this net zero issue. So that is in a way the decarbonization efforts, they call it. Like in the ships now, they are free of sulfur now. The sulfur content has reduced, and you have methane or hydrogen driven tankers. So basically, all these are part of the decarbonization effort to reduce the carbon footprint. And so only when this is addressed, your social value and economic environment value increases. And now, just with the financial value, you cannot run the show. You have to have this social and environment value also addressed. And that is where sustainability comes in. So this area is going to be the in thing in future. So even if you see in edX, they have a course on sustainable supply chains, which is about 6 months. You can even go through that. So it's not only, sustainability is related to supply chain, because only supply chain can initiate this sustainability efforts in any organization. So just take a note of this sustainability, and you can go to just Google search Sustainability 101, and you'll get all the related content pertaining to sustainability. So another small few minutes on talent management. As I told you, many aspire to be in that S&OP cross-discipline field when it comes to supply chain. And so what is needed for a modern day supply chain professional? He should be both relational and analytical skilled. And so basically, the relation works out in supply chain when he has to speak to suppliers, speak to customers, speak to 3PL, and not just have only coordination with his internal teams. So he should be exposed to talking and doing business with the external entities within the supply chain. And his analytical skills, of course, what he has learned from classroom. And so basically that also needs to be fine-tuned. And both strategic and tactical level exposure is required. Both, of course, global and local. It's always good to work in a third country, learn their culture, instead of having your full talent disposed in only one locality. And basically, you have to be a T-shaped professional instead of I-shaped. So basically, the I is for the deep functional expertise, and the T is for the broad general skills. So you should not have a tall T, but a very short, flat T. and your the crossover of T should be longer than the vertical T. So this is the way future professionals should be shaped. So the last slide is for the main supply chain trends. As I told you, value transformation is given due importance, not only financial value, but also social and environment value. Then automatic technology is the IoT, where you are now making devices talk so that we know in terms of tracking, tracing, where the cargo is now. I mean, this also adds value to the customer. Customer will ask where my cargo is. So you have to give him online information or where it is right now, which is it with the manufacturer or is it the intermediary, wholesaler, retailer, or is it in some godown and still not delivered. So this sort of technology, visibility technology, is now being adopted by most of the companies. And local optimization is a new term where I mean, basically, you have to have to bridge the cultural differences. Many companies have gone for regional offices. Basically, a regional like Middle East, a regional setup in Dubai will take care of the other Gulf countries. So the cultural difference also is accounted for, and so you don't have to work from one part of the world to cater to people from the other side of the world. So for some business units, you can have a regional representation. Some you can have a local representation, and so they call it a local optimization. That's a new term being used now. And risk prognosis is to maintain this continuity and resiliency in supply chains. You have to have a risk prognostic view so that any disruption is anticipated and annulled. You bypass the risk and go in a way like during the pandemic. Many had a good amount of buffer stock to cater to sudden surge in demand, but most did not have. So those few who had planned for it, they were benefited. So risk prognosis is also a future trend. And they call it, the last one is pro-sustainability, which is an extended sustainability where even without you feeling the need to be sustainable, you have the mechanism to initiate those sustainable efforts in your organization. So that they call it pro-sustainability. And so these are the 5 future supply chain trends. And I hope I covered a lot of material within a short time, but I'm so sorry I had to cover too much within too short time. But any elaborate discussion on any topic in future, you can always reach out to me through your institute. Thank you, and it was such a nice, and thanks for your patience to listen to me. Mr. Narayanan?
Good, Prabhu. So nice listening to you and quite enlightening too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sparing